What does freedom mean to you? The right to vote, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and what role does democracy play in freedom? What really freedom means? Political scientists contend that the resilience of a democracy hinges on a robust civic culture, defined by the society's ability to tolerate, even to support political dissent. So if we in a true democracy, therefore a true freedom, we need to ask ourselves one question. Can we dissent freely without paying a price? Before I start, let me share this with you. This is حرية, which is the Arabic word for freedom. This word impacted my life more than any other word. I was willing to go to jail, even willing to die, to stand for what I believe in. So please allow me to share my story with you. This is inside the Egyptian criminal court, where I was under trial for defending human rights and democracy in Egypt. I wrote the word حرية in red lipstick. Red for the blood of my friends who were killed in the streets of Egypt. My name is Issam Borai. I grew up in Egypt. My whole life, I know only one president, Hosni Mubarak. He had only one rule: do not step out flying, never challenge the status quo. We had no freedom whatsoever. There was no free press, and our votes never truly counted. I decided to dissent. I decided to face the consequences. Look where that got me. The cage had iron bars on three sides. The back door behind me was concrete, where I wrote the word حرية. I decided to turn that cage into a stage, not into a prison. I knew I was made an example of for the whole entire nation. So the only thing they will see of me will be my smile and the word حرية. When my friends came to visit me, I asked them if they have anything I could write with. The only thing I have is my lipstick, one of them said. I said, that is perfect. The wall behind me was made, it's going to be my canvas. The door was so small, I had to bend my head every time I go through. It was made like this on purpose to dehumanize. The more I descended, the more I was punished. One of the many lawyers against me was demanding that I was sentenced with death penalty. When one of my lawyers went to politely ask him not to mention the death penalty on live national TV, his mom is watching, she could die, my lawyer said. His response was, good. She should have raised him not to betray his country. The crime that got me into that position was something I had been doing since I was in college, as I protested against Mubarak regime on campus and in the streets of Cairo. Young people like me were desperate to be given any opportunity or have any choices. And after many years of grassroots organizing and police chasing, arrest, and prison, the time for Arab Spring finally arrived. If we will to make any impact, we must occupy Tahrir Square. Tahrir Square is the heart of Cairo, in which you have every government building, every foreign embassy, and every news outlet, foreign and international. If we wanted to make our voices heard, we must be in Tahrir Square. Knowing this, the regime turned the square into a military zone. We acknowledge that our lives could be at risk, and so it's a personal decision to decide how far are we willing to go in defending freedom. I reflected on that decision. It was a true time for self-examination. Am I really brave enough to stand for what I believe in? I felt the responsibility of potentially millions of people who will come down and march in the streets with us. If we as organizers will ask them to risk their lives, we have to lead by examples and be the first to put our lives on the line. My starting position was across the Nile River from Tahrir Square. The idea was to encourage more and more Egyptians to join us as we march through crowded neighborhoods. Our march was met with violence in every step of the way, but we know if the regime had tanks and guns, we will have the people. The violence gets worse the closer we get to the Tahrir Square and crossing the Nile River. As the media reported, military tanks, military cars, guns, rubber bullets, snipers on high-rise building were shooting at us. As we were running to cross the Asr Nil bridge, one of my friends got shot and fell. I knelt beside him. I tried to help. But as I looked up at the snipers, tanks, and guns pointed at us, I knew something with extreme clarity that day. If I stay, I would be shot or arrested, and the regime would survive. If the regime survived, it will not only destroy me, it will destroy every single person who marched on the streets that day. Every dream of freedom we brought to the streets. Every young man and woman who bled for the cause. I knew honoring him was to win. Helping him was to push forward. So I wiped his blood to my shirt and kept running. By the time I arrived at the square, I was exhausted, out of breath. My hands were shaking. But rumors started spreading that the military is coming down to kick us out of the square. There was no time to waste. I started building barriers with broken police materials to prevent the military from coming in. I built tents, I built stages, I built bathrooms, and built stages for music and sound system. Eventually, we started chanting in unison. More than 1 million Egyptians chanting for one goal, Hurriya. The momentum we've gained in Tahrir Square empowered so many Egyptians to join us in every city. We eventually successfully ousted Mubarak. We were so happy that day. I was surrounded with thousands of people sharing hugs and kisses. I cried like never before. I couldn't be more proud. But our hopes were short-lived, as the military who took over Mubarak regime wanted to cement their power and authority in the new era, and dissent was not tolerated. Their first task was to empty the square. I left the square, but not the revolution. Look, we were pushing for free election, a new democratic constitution, and more importantly, a new republic. I went on to become a founding member of the leading political party to represent the revolution at the time. I worked on my party external affairs outreach. I held many meetings in so many cities, villages, and I chanted in so many squares. I documented human rights violations that had been happening before and during the revolution and was still continuing to happen till that day. I trained many people on the importance of political organizing and elections. I started planning my campaign to run for the Egyptian Senate. My agenda was accountability in a country that's no longer militant dictatorship. I went on from protesting and dissenting against Mubarak regime to dissenting against the militant regime. But the bars will only get higher. My office was raided. The National Security Police, I was detained by the National Security Police, and I was eventually sent to the criminal court where I was tried as a human rights defender. My official crime was working for a human rights organization, but my ultimate crime was that of dissent. The judge found me guilty, and I was sentenced to prison. A verdict that put my life at risk and led me to flee the country. I immediately left everything behind and started running away. I activated the James Bond move to plan my escape. At the airport, I used every means of corruption you could think of to get me out of there without triggering any alarm put on my name. After all, I was a convicted criminal whose name and picture had been plastered on national TV for months. That was my one only shot at escaping to safety. As I boarded the plane and sat finally into my seat, everything will give me a panic attack. A siren on the tarmac, a slight movement of the pilot, a look of the flight attendant, a car moving next to the plane, extreme fear. I was extremely panicking in the inside, but on the outside, I was as cool as James Bond and Tom Cruise combined. I could not risk any suspicion. After a long flight, I landed in DC, not speaking a word of English and knowing no one. But I was safe. I applied for political asylum, and I started using my voice and this opportunity to advocate for a change in Egypt. I vowed to use my podium here to advocate for my friends and colleagues in Egypt who could not leave the country, and as the media reported, were still killed in the streets. But first, I need to learn English. I need to learn how many words you guys use for the meat that comes out of pork, sausages, ham, bacon. And I need to learn how to avoid avocado, my least favorite food, which you guys seem to put on everything. On the political side, however, I kept protesting against the military coup in Egypt. I also get more involved in American politics. I went on to the Congress and attended many public hearings. That was 25 pounds ago. I met regularly with senators and members of Congress. I became a pro-democracy speaker. In 2017, my asylum case was still pending, while administration initiated a decision to a travel ban against Muslim-majority countries. Rumors started that Muslim asylum seekers will not be accepted and they will be deported back to their home country. I knew my next battle had begun. I went down to the streets again to protest against the decision. Leading thousands of people, I had to dissent yet again. I went on to lead the first Muslim prayer at the stairs of the state capitol, and that day I was well too aware that abuse of power and injustices are not just a thing in Egypt. It could be found everywhere. Slipping into authoritarianism can happen easily and quickly. Capitalizing on my grassroots organizing, I started joining political campaigns as a field organizer and as a campaign manager. I did work on all levels of campaign, from governor to state representative and even to president. I did work as a poll worker and as a party strategist. I wanted to build my own freedom. I wanted to strengthen my own community. I wanted to teach people that dissent is not a weakness in democracy, but it's consciousness. My organizing got me elected to represent the state of Connecticut as the DNC 2024 Presidential Convention in Chicago. I was the happiest man on earth, a day filled with mixed emotion. Literally one day I was a political prisoner in an iron cage in Egypt. Today, I'm an elected delegate to choose the next president of the United States. True opportunity to make a difference in the US, in Egypt, and in the world. It was a turbulent time for the DNC. A president had just dropped out. The first black Asian woman was running, so it was Trump. And the war in Gaza was the backdrop of all of this, which was the forefront of my mind. The responsibility felt enormous. I used every probable channel to make the party leadership to address the issue. Phone calls, emails, petitions, meetings, the answer was always the same. Save it to the convention. I believed them. I waited. When the convention finally arrived, was nothing. No matter how many times I asked, no matter how many ways I tried, the doors still closed. When you exhaust all available options and you cannot get anyone to hear you, this is where dissent begins. Two of my friends and I went back to the hotel and painted a huge banner with our message on it. We knew the president was scheduled to speak, so we will be the one who takes the stand. If this is the only way, so be it. I know I couldn't get the banner across the security at the convention center, so I asked my friend if she could hide the banner under her dress. She did. After passing the security at the convention center, we went to the bathroom. I got the banner ready in my bag. After the president took the stage, we unfurled our banner. Every DNC member, a Secret Service agent, and fellow delegates start attacking us, calling us bad names, spitting on us, beating us with sticks on our heads. And the DNC staff start asking everybody around us to start chanting, "We love Joe, we love Joe." And while others were forcibly trying to take away our banner. The Secret Service demanded that I leave the arena and get out. We were being told for a week that we had been fighting fascism, and at the first sight of dissent, silent, peaceful dissent, we were attacked. We were supposed to be at the Democratic Convention, yet dissent, the backbone of democracy, was not tolerated. And instead, the DNC was supporting conformity over democracy. Chicago taught me very well that no matter how people bragging about supporting freedom and democracy, they could flip into violent authoritarian at any moment, at the first sight of dissent. Look, I'm not here to tell you to face military tanks or interrupt the president's speech or to put yourself in any way in any danger. I'm here to tell you that dissent doesn't have to be dramatic to matter. It could be as big as starting a revolution or as small as a man walking his dog with a sign on his back, says what he believes in a country that still lets him. Running the streets of Cairo, hiding from my government bullets, taught me how difficult it is to win freedom. Standing at the convention hall taught me how easy it could be taken away. I will leave you today with one question, not a political question, but a human one. Streets of Cairo looked the same they did because enough people stayed silent for long enough. How long are you willing to stay silent? Freedom. Thank you so much. Thank you.